She's very active on
European. We are live now.
And now we are live. Okay. All right. We'll start. Herzlich willkommen zu unserem Gespräch über die aktuelle Situation in Italien. Mein Name ist Maria Maltschnig. Ich bin die Direktorin des Karl-Renner-Instituts. We will switch to English when we start the debate. Let me just start with some remarks in German, as most of our audience is German speaking. Also wir wollen heute über die wirtschaftliche und soziale Lage in Italien sprechen. Zunächst war und ist in Teilen immer noch die dramatische Zahl von Corona-Infizierten in Norditalien und ein völlig überlastetes Gesundheitssystem im Fokus der öffentlichen Aufmerksamkeit. Bald aber, und es zeigt sich ja auch jetzt schon teilweise, werden die verheerenden Auswirkungen auf die italienische Wirtschaft und das Einkommen und die Versorgung der Menschen sichtbar werden. Und darüber wollen wir heute im Besonderen sprechen. Italien ist ja ein Land, in dem die Zustimmung zur Europäischen Union traditionell sehr hoch ist in der Bevölkerung. Nun sehen wir aber eine rasant wachsende Europaskepsis. Es gibt eine Umfrage von Anfang April, in der 70% der Befragten angeben, sie hätten kein Vertrauen in die EU. Matteo Salvini von der rechtsextremen Lega hat bereits gefordert, dass Italien seine EU-Mitgliedschaft überdenken solle. Die italienische Regierung hat sich auf EU-Ebene darauf konzentriert, ein möglichst wirksames Instrument zur Finanzierung der Krisenkosten auf die Beine zu stellen. Und es gab intensive Diskussionen darum. Italien hat zunächst Eurobonds, also eine gemeinschaftliche Euro-Anleihe gefordert und schließlich vergangene Woche beim Europäischen Rat einen Kompromiss mit den anderen EU-Mitgliedstaaten erzielen können. Ja, so viel einmal zu einer kurzen Einordnung, zu einer kurzen Zusammenfassung der aktuellen Entwicklung. Wir wollen eben heute darüber sprechen, wie sich diese Krise oder man kann auch sagen, dieser Schock auf die italienische Wirtschaft und Gesellschaft und damit auch auf die politische Entwicklung auswirkt und auswirken wird. Und auch die Frage diskutieren, wie eine sozialdemokratische Krisenpolitik ausschaut und wie man auf europäischer Ebene Solidarität organisieren kann. Noch ein Hinweis, das Gespräch wird aufgezeichnet. Das Video wird dann anschließend auch auf unserer Facebook-Seite und auf YouTube abrufbar sein. Und wenn Sie Fragen an einen unserer beiden Gäste haben, dann posten Sie diese bitte unter das Video und wir werden dann versuchen, sie so gut wie möglich im Laufe des Gesprächs zu beantworten. Let me now switch to English and welcome our guests. Hello to Enzo Amendola. He is the Italian Minister for European Affairs and also a member of the Social Democratic Partito Democratico. I'm tempted to say welcome back to Vienna, even if you're not here physically. You have been living in Vienna for quite a while when you were Secretary General of the International Union of Socialist Youth, which has its headquarters here in Vienna. Thank you very much for being with us and taking your time in such a challenging time, in such challenging days, especially for you. And our second guest is Andreas Schieder, who is the head of the SPÖ delegation in the European Parliament. And he is also a former leader of a social democratic youth movement, the Young European Socialists, like they're called now. And this is why Enzo and Andreas have been knowing each other for quite a while. So they are not meeting for the first time today. They've been friends for a while. Enzo Amendola, can you tell us how are things developing in Italy right now? How are the people coping and what are the biggest challenges at the moment?
First of all, thank you, Maria, for the invitation. Many greetings to my friend Andreas, Andy, and it's my pleasure. The situation at the moment is the following. As you know, Italy was touched by the pandemic first in Europe. I mean, we were speaking end of February, Italy, we had the first cases. And so we discover before the other country, at least 2-3 weeks before the other, that in the north of Italy, there was the COVID-19 spreading. Actually, unfortunately, we reached the number of more than 27,000 people that are dead. The cases, of course, during the last 2 months change a lot, as everywhere, for the lockdown, for the sacrifices that everybody did, the atmosphere in the country. And we try to work between the government, the President of the Republic, to spread a message of solidarity, unity, and social cohesion. Nowadays, the number and the curve of the pandemic is going down, is getting down. We reached the plateau, and we are planning the track number 2, the phase number 2, that will start on the 4th of May. But we think, and this is a huge discussion nowadays, that this reopening of the country should be done in a complex way, starting from some kind of business economy, manufacture plant, and not try to give the sense that from the 4th of May, everything is reopened. Because we think, and we saw also some other experience in Germany and France, that we have to do step by step, risking, of course, that the social cohesion is boiling, especially for the socio-economic outcome of this crisis, but we have to do step by step. Many sacrifices were done, so we don't want that all the sacrifice that we did now, they give a sense that we are out of the tunnel. We know everybody that this is a pandemic, so until we don't have the vaccination, we are not free from this fight. And step by step, changing behavior, social behavior, and also, of course, asking all the value chain, all the company to have internal medical, let's say, protection, the country can start to breathe again. To be honest, if we go on the European level, I want to be very clear, we are quite satisfied for the reaction. I don't want to be pessimistic, I'm realistic. At the beginning in March, end of February, beginning of March, probably was not understood what was going on. Also because the news from China probably were a bit misunderstood. You remember that just half of March, in mid of March, the World Health Organization called it pandemic and not epidemical problem. So there was a delay, clearly. Many leaders around Europe didn't get at the beginning what was the problem, and the reaction was not coordinated. Then we received also apology from Ursula von der Leyen, Charles Michel, because Italy was eaten first, and we got a lack of reaction. Also because on the European level, Andy knows better than me, there is no coordination on health policy. This was just a news that we got it. But in terms of socio-economic answer, I don't want to say that we are out of the tunnel, but we saw a reaction. In just few weeks, and this is the difference from the past, European Commission, European Central Bank, and then last week, the European Council coordinated a reaction that I think is the most important thing. And for the first time, there is a common narrative over the crisis, because this is an exogenous crisis. This is a systemic crisis that is attacking the supply and the demand, and also is symmetrical because all the 27 were under this crisis, but could have, and this is the risk that we are discussing nowadays, some asymmetrical outcome from the crisis. You know that countries that have more fiscal space, they can have more expensive reaction. Other countries that have big debt, they could increase the debt. So there could be a risk of fragmentation of the Eurozone, and also some imbalances that could have a risk on the integrity and interconnection of the market union. So what we ask the European Union is not, of course, to take care of solidarity in terms of what happened in the past, but to have a coordination in terms of answering to the crisis. The European Commission did a good job on the Stability Pact, suspending on the framework for state aid, so giving the possibility to all of us to react with good fiscal input, stimulation of the internal economy, and especially social protection that was a need. And together with the 27, now we found a compromise, a track with three safety net. One is for unemployment, one is for business, and one is for helping the expenses on health for the COVID-19. And then we organized this new track that is the so-called recovery fund, that is a big political common tool in order to support the resilience of the European economy. And secondly, to plan, let's say, a support to resilience of the value chain that is interconnected. We say not as a slogan, not to do a tweet that no country can do alone. No country cannot manage alone because we are all interconnecting. And for this unprecedented crisis, we have to be coordinated in terms of reaction. 2010, there was another kind of crisis. That moment was a financial one that was then pushed to some country collapsing. But this is a crisis of the systemic, let's say, to the supply and demand of the real economy of the European Union. And in order to maintain an internal level playing field, unity of the market, unity in terms of possibility, we have to work all together. I think what we reached on the 23rd was a good compromise. Italy on 1 month ago, on 25th of March, together with the other 8 countries, France, Spain, Portugal, supported also by the socialist family, we pushed some new proposal. And after 1 month, these new proposals are on the table. We are negotiating and we try to close everything in June because this is our topic. So something unprecedented happened, and when you are confronting yourself with the history, with this these news that are changing your life, leadership must show capability to find unprecedented solution. And we are, let's say, on the good track. We have to negotiate, we have to work, and we have to be united.
Andreas, thank you, Enzo. Andreas, how did you experience the debate on the European level in the European Parliament? So why is it so difficult, or why has it been so difficult in the last weeks to find a way to organize European solidarity towards those countries? Oh, I'm sorry. We have an issue with the alarm.
Smoking.
Okay, it's over. Very sorry for the incident.
This was an intro for Andy. It was a
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. No. First of all, also warm welcome from my side, and it's good to see Enzo again. The last time we met by accident on the gangway of the European Parliament, and now I can fully agree what Enzo was saying on how slowly it took that we all understood what really is going on. This we have to admit honestly. But I'm also slightly disappointed by the reaction of the European Union, because I think at the moment it was clear it will be a pandemic problem which will hit all our states. I would have expected that the European Commission, for example, is naming a coordinator like we have for the Brexit to solve the big and the small problems which are arising, because it is clear health policy is a nation policy. But on the other side, it's also clear it's a virus which doesn't consider any of the borders. So also our political approach and our health political approach must be borderless. So this is phase 1, let's say, combating the virus. Anyway, there was a lot of, let's call it, also misunderstanding between the European states, blocking transports of masks and other things. Was this classical, whenever you have a crisis, everybody tries to be his own best friend. And at the end is realizing you cannot help yourself only by yourself, you need also the others. So now we are in this phase 2, in between. And I think we understood we have to do something. So European Commission started to work also on the issues. European ministers and council also adopted a lot of measures. The European Parliament also was pushing and is doing so. And at the end, we will come to this phase number 3, which is how will be the recovery. and this I think is clear. No single state can solve it alone. So if this continuing of national egoistic approach is ending in the middle of nowhere, because even not the strongest economies in Europe can solve this systemic risk, as Enzo was saying. It is systemic, means all the countries are hit parallel. It's not the fault that the one are lazy and the other one are, let's say, very brave, hard workers. It is simply a fucking virus which is hitting all the economy. So we need to also to react on this. Probably this will be also one point of discussion. So I'll keep my analysis how we should do it for later on. But I think to sum up, at the beginning, we missed European solidarity, but we realized, I think, most of us, except maybe Mr. Orban and some others, we realized that we have to work together, which is the only way to come out of this crisis.
And so, do you have any idea how, in what amount the Italian economy will be damaged? And yeah, dimensions.
We did already 2 lines of budget. We voted this week. We are passing in another. So we are speaking about calculation that we could arrive to public debt to, let's say, an increase of more than 10% already. And also the deficit, I think we are going to arrive over the 9%. So what we are speaking about is an amount of money more than 100 billion, at least, in order to support the economy. What we did was using the lifting of the temporary framework on the state aids in order to push guarantee, to make a shield for the business line and to the economy in order to guarantee all the entrepreneurs for the liquidity and the solvency. Secondly, what we are doing is a huge amount of money for social protection, especially the people that are close at home, locked down and losing their job. We are trying to, we're stimulating at least some kind of subsidies. There are temporary measures, but they are needed in order to have the resilience. I mean, 2 months of lockdown means a lot. In terms also of economical discussion, we are working a lot within the European framework. So this is good because there is a European shield in order to act. But of course, if you look the number of the state aids lifting, you can check at the European level that half of the stimulus was done by Germany because there are countries that they have more fiscal space to push resources and to boost resources for this kind of crisis. So we're not asking European support, we are just asking European coordination. European Commission did on the rules, Stability Pact and state aids. This has to be clear because otherwise we make propaganda and we have many right-wing parties doing propaganda over Europe. But of course now we have to plan the track number 2 and the recovery means some structural approach.
A question to both of you. Do you think we will get through this crisis with the classical stimulus measurements, or are there any new political ideas how to overcome this, or do we have to develop new political ideas how to get out of this crisis?
Andy first.
Okay, now I think if we assume that it's systemic, this is symmetric, this means that everybody is hit extremely strongly by once. I think there are 2 major rules economically. The first is we need a lot of money. Secondly, we need it quickly and easy access to the money. And we have to act fast and not to make any doubt that we will do it. So then coming a little bit more complicated because the question is how to raise this money. We speak about between 1 and 2, maybe 3 billion, we will see. Also, of course, the question is in which period of time we can spend a lot of money like this. We have the question, where does the money come from? There we have taxing of big internet giants, which are making now a lot of money like Amazon because everybody's staying at home and making order. We have the issue of tax havens closing down, and we have also the issue of recovery bond, Euro bond, and this issue. But then it is, of course, clear when you invest money, you should do it intelligently, means climate and new social justice must be also touched. And we have the problem that it's not only the classical economy. No, it's not only about let's say investing in classical, because it's the service industry, it's the tourism where we don't know when to open. So we have to also find a different way. That's why I think, and I'll stop here. Let's say the domestic, the personal pocket of the people is extremely important. And high unemployment is taking away the money from the people. And we have to bridge this. So that's why the debate of lifting up unemployment payments, that's why the discussion of helicopter money and other issues are coming into the scene.
Yeah, I agree. We are in a strange equation because, of course, we have more need for social protection and more money resources to boosting welfare state. At the same moment, we have for sure the increasing of the debt, but at the same moment, we are going to pass, according to the IMF parameter, a big loss in terms of growth. So it doesn't balance the situation, and so we have to find a way out to manage all together. For sure, a European shield is important. Let's discuss after about the amount, but let's have a shield in terms of saying, like Mario Draghi did in 2012, whatever it takes. This time is the political leadership that has to say whatever it takes. It's not just passing to the central bank or to other institutions. If the 27 move in this recession and channel themselves in this recession, saying whatever it takes, so we do whatever is necessary in order to defend each other, probably we can even resist in terms of passing the problem. In case of disaggregation or in terms of disunity, of course, we risk what we did in 10 years ago, but with a different effect, because 10 years ago, probably you could have blame on Greece for debt issue and so on Italy and other, but this time is the supply chain that is completely broken. So if the demand doesn't work, you cannot produce it. If the consumers are stocked and the liquidity is completely collapsing, is the internal market union that is collapsing. Even if you are a strong country, you cannot produce and sell to anyone. 30% of the European GDP is based on export. And one of the main markets is United States. And you see what is going on over there also in terms of economical crisis. So are the parameter of the European market that is under discussion. It's not just one country situation, Italy, Spain, or Greece, or whatever, like it was in the past. In terms of coordination, it's important that we show that we are a political union. A political union means we do whatever it takes to defend ourselves in this crisis. And let's see that I see from the 23rd in 1 month some reaction, and let's push on this reaction in order to give a sense that we are a political, let's say, political subject in order to face this crisis.
We have a question from Roman, who asks who should pay for all the debt in the end. Do you have a debate about distribution of wealth and raising taxes, lowering taxes, whatever?
But the proposal that we are speaking on, and then Andy can clarify better than me, at the European level is to create 3 safety net, as they call it, one by the Commission for unemployment, one from the Bank of European Investment for the entrepreneurs, and the third by the European Stability Mechanism for the health expenses. The fourth tool is the Recovery Fund. The Recovery Fund has to be interlinked with the European budget that we have to approve immediately in the next weeks, I think from now to June. And within the European budget to create this Recovery Fund. The Recovery Fund that should be, of course, based on the European Union guarantee. The Commission will make a proposal, a technical proposal that is under discussion, but the guarantee means the possibility for the European Commission to go on the market and to produce some bond. It has to be based on debt. You know, this is a discussion that since 20 years we are doing with Delors and the other, the socialist family and so on. Is it possible? For the first time we are showing that it's possible even within this treaty, using the Article 122, to produce for the European Union, for the European Commission, the way to collect resources on the market. And of course, these resources that should be shared among the country, not just paying the former debt of each country. This is a national issue and each country has to solve on its own. But to invest this money in order to have sectors and geographical, let's say, possibility for the European internal market to recover. So it's not everybody will have an amount of resources to do whatever they want, but we have to spend all together. Italy, Austria, and Germany, we are interconnected in terms of supply chain, in terms of manufacturing, in terms of working together, in terms of transport, in terms of logistics. So it means that this amount of money, just to make an example, has to be directly channeled to the country that they have project in order to support the resilience of the market union.
Andreas, how do you see the question of the costs of the crisis and who should pay?
If we speak about the cost, usually the question comes when we speak about how much we need to come out of the crisis, and then it was who should we pay? We should not forget that also now somebody pays for this crisis in the economic sense, which is clearly those people who lost their job. And with losing your job, you lose half of your income. It's those people who have in part-time labor schemes. It's those people which do not have chances in the future, don't find a job now. So we have already now a socially disbalanced payment of the crisis. Because usually it's, of course, it's smaller income, it's the less educated people, it's more women than men who pay the cost. And it's not the bosses of the big companies who are paying the cost. So the social justice issue in the tax issue, but also on creating a social network in Europe, I think is strongly on the table. Therefore, it is historic that the European institutions and also the European Parliament voted for this 100 million investment, 100 billion. I made a mistake before because in English, brilliant. So don't get confused with the zeros, but 100 billion for the labor market unemployment reinsurance scheme. It's the first time that Europe takes a strong position also on active labor market policy. So, and if we come on the recovery fund, which need to have 2 trillion, I think is in English, euros minimum, then it is the future who has to pay. So if we don't invest, we will have to pay it with having no growth and no economic well-being. If we invest and we put it, let's say, on the history in the future, not only history, in our future challenges for the next 50 years, like the Marshall Fund was doing after the Second World War, I think it is easier, but this doesn't mean that we do not need to work on this justice issue. So there is wealth taxing, tax havens, and this issue, I think, is stronger on the table than ever before, because this has to stop, because this gives us also the chances to combine fairness with the necessary money.
Which brings me to the matter of globalization. What we see right now is actually that trade is harmed a lot, and we see all how dependent we are on other economic regions in the world. Andreas, you have been working on the matter of globalization a lot. How do you see a possible perspective for the EU in a globalized post-crisis economy?
I think we have to work really in detail on the supply chain issue or value-added chain. So this means we just last week we had the 7th anniversary of this Rana Plaza, which was the textile factory, which the house broke down and more than 1,000 people died in Bangladesh, which made brutally clear there's something wrong. And what we see now is that Europe also is depending on this supply chain. So, for example, we don't get ingredients for pharmaceutical products because they are produced somewhere else, and in the end, this makes a big problem. So we have to, I think, to be not against globalization, but the globalization must be more fair and more. This just-in-time, cheapest attitude is not the only one which we need. We need also security, product safety, labor market right, and probably also we have to be more local. This is also what we learn now, that local communities on food production, but also on other issues, on cultural goods and so on, I think are extremely important for the future. And as Enzo was saying, 30% is export. We see how supply chains are extremely important. So if they are cut, you have a negative impact also on other sides. So we have to be sure that they are not cut, but more fair.
I completely agree. I mean, there was a period when free trade was the mainstream 10 years ago. Of course, the developing of the number and the economy was enriching itself. But let's imagine just one element. The global legal standard in terms of health, in terms of food. Nowadays, when you sit and make an agreement with another country or big power like China, you cannot avoid to have global legal standard because they are not a country far away, are your neighboring continent. So it's like Italy and Austria. So whatever happened in that part of the world has an effect on you. So when we speak nowadays about overcoming this idea of free trade and having more free and fair trade means also to review a bit the global legal standard. We know on agriculture, there are many discussions about the agreement that we did or we are negotiating with Mercosur. Yesterday, Europe closed an agreement with Mexico, are not just a way to protect ourselves. It's also a way to draft a base for a common agreement. Otherwise, cases like we are living now with COVID-19 cannot be mentioned as an eventual possibility, as a part of our common reality nowadays.
I mentioned before that in Italy there is a rising debate concerning the EU membership itself. How do you, or at least that's what we read in our newspapers, how do you experience this debate? Is this really a question that's prominently debated, and how are you dealing with it?
Look, Maria, if I look at the poll during the last 2 months all over Europe and also in Italy, I see that there is a decrease of the far-right nationalist approach. I mean, if I see from FD, FPO to Lega, to all over Europe, I see that there is a decreasing of their, let's say, capability to grow in terms of poll. In Italy, there are some polls that give my party just 4 points down the Lega. 2 months ago, we were at least 10 points down. So I see that there is not a growth. I mean, they are very vocal, but there is not a huge amount of, let's say, moving in terms of electoral position. What is increasing, and this is our fear, is this narrative that Europe is leaving us alone and Europe doesn't react and Europe doesn't exist. There are many components for this. The first Andy was mentioning, I mean, we spent at least 3 weeks alone on COVID-19 while everybody in Europe was thinking that probably was an Italian flu. And this creating the first reaction that was very difficult from us. Secondly, there is also the fear coming from the past, because when you speak about Greece in Italy, what we did in the financial crisis in 2010, I mean, everybody can answer to you immediately, Troika, a social collapse. So this idea of Europe that when make an intervention, go and destroy the country is something still in their mind. Nowadays, luckily, we are moving in another direction that is much more positive. And third, there was a narrative, of course, more political, but this is Eurosceptical approach, nationalist approach. So let's take back control. This is the main slogan. No, Europe is something, we are losing time. This is typically from the right-wing Italian at the moment, from all over Europe. Me, I think in the long term is a suicide, because take back control when a COVID-19 virus and the crisis doesn't care about the border and what's your control is, I think, is for a country like us, but I think for all the 27, it's just a suicide. So let's see that politically the narrative is very vibrant, but in terms of consensus, I have some doubt that is increasing, and if I see the poll, it's not increasing anywhere. Another issue is the, let's say, Chinese solidarity and Russia solidarity that is a part of another problem that is more geopolitical for the European Union.
Andreas, thank you. Andreas, you are watching the political situations in the EU member states quite closely. Do you see, like, overall, like a rise or a decrease in right-wing populism, nationalism, Euroscepticism, or do you see different developments?
I think what we see is a diverse picture. No, we see the Hungarian way, which is even doing out of the worse even worse. We see that in some countries also the classical conservative governments, like for example in Austria, they strongly play these national egoistic songs for the audience. But at the end of the day, and I think it is, I still believe in this, that at the end, the driving forces are the facts. And the fact is that we are in a deep crisis. We even don't know how deep it is, what are the social and economic impact of this crisis, and still we haven't solved the health issue either. This means at the end, this is the driving force, and this can be only answered together. So this is the reason why I think at the end people will say we want to have a stronger and more Europe. And if Europe is taking this chance also and starting to act even stronger and making more proposal, I think it is. But without Europe, we cannot solve neither the health issue, nor the economic, nor the social issue, and also not the climate issue.
We had two more questions or comment by two people, both related to the economy once more, and I give both questions to both of you. The first one is from Jürgen, who asks how can Italy finally generate growth again, like in a perspective, and he says that government debt is very high, but private and corporate debt is comparatively low. And what about the load balancing? And the second one is a suggestion, obviously, to increase demand after the crisis. What about a European-wide minimum income? Yeah.
No, to Jürgen, his analysis, I mean, looking the data is correct. Of course, we are going to have an increase of public debt. There was this interview of Mario Draghi on Financial Times a week ago. He said the only way to resist in this crisis is creating debt, but not because we like to spend, but because in order to let the people in terms of social protection and social demands not to collapse, you need to help in a way. So what we are doing is there is no other answer, because at this particular moment, we are speaking about fragile sector of the society out of the possibility of having a salary of creating. What we are doing is also, this is the particular moment, especially in a crisis, that you have to make some change, big change. The first big change is in the bureaucracy of the state, that we are working now to have a law, fast-track law, in order to cancel a bit of bureaucratic, simplify the machine, digitalize the machine. And secondly, we were already thinking, and we want to go on together with the European Union to spend time, money, and resources on the sustainability. We think that the Green Deal is not a slogan, but is a change of paradigm, is something that is uniting the company, workers, and the public aspect, and so on this we want to go on. We would like that the recovery is green. I mean, I think it's the most competitive idea that the European Union is producing since years, and I think it's a way to stay and to live in this world and to be competitive, to change our economical system in more sustainable way, more and our production with the reduction of cost and especially reduction of the damage that we do to the planet. So digital and Green Deal there are two main tracks of the European Union that we completely apply in this country. We want to go on. But in terms of public debt, of course, we see that at least for this semester, it could be impossible to avoid this idea. Everywhere in Europe, there is an increase from France to Spain to, I don't know, I want to speak about Austria, you know better than me, but there is no other ways in order to resist to this issue. And the European Commission indeed given help for this reason.
Andy?
Oh, okay. I think there's not much to add. At the end, when we see the results of this crisis, we will see big public debt, but also big private company debt, because they need also to, of course, a lot of companies even now are standing at the end, and we will see a lot of private debt. So the only solution is take more public debt in order to invest again and to start restarting the machine in a better way than before. It means more social and more green. So I think it's the only solution, and it's not so problematic like it was in 2010. Because in 2010, the problem was the one had huge debt, the other ones had little debts. Now everybody has exactly the same problem.
Right. I have a personal question to Enzo in the end, which I'm sure many of our viewers have as well, as Italy is one of the favorite holiday destinations for Austrians. When do you think we can come to visit your most beautiful country again?
I hope soon. I hope soon, Maria, for you, for Andy, to host you on tourism. You know, we need coordination. Indeed, there is already a table at European level, because we should find a way how to travel around Europe in a safe way, in a coordinated way. I mean, Italy is really welcoming tourism. It's part of our GDP, it's part of our of course, resources that we mobilize. It's something that make even thinking about ourselves, because all the season that is coming, how to organize it. But be sure that we are going to have an answer at the end of May, and will be a European coordinated answer. So try to have in your agenda for July, August, some space to come to Italy. Let's check like this. Let's be optimistic.
That would be wonderful. All right. Thank you very much, both of you. Thank you, Enzo Amendola. We wish you and the people in your country very well. We are happy to host you in Vienna when things are good again. Thank you, Andreas, for initiating this talk, actually. Yes, und zum Schluss möchte ich mich auch noch bedanken bei meinen Kolleginnen Gerhard Machel und Barbara Hoffmann für die Organisation und den technischen Support. Wir haben morgen um 15 Uhr auch wieder eine Live-Veranstaltung mit dem Datenschutzexperten Max Schrems und der SPÖ-EU-Abgeordneten Bettina Vollert zum Thema Grundrechte und Datenschutz. Ist ja auch ein großes, heißes Thema. Vielleicht schaut ihr ja dann hier wieder rein. Vielen Dank fürs Zuschauen. Bis zum nächsten Mal.